Mr. Wells, however, is not quite clear enough of the narrower scientific outlook to see that there are some things which actually ought not to be scientific. He is still slightly affected with the great scientific fallacy, I mean the habit of beginning not with the human soul, which is the first thing a man learns about, but with such things as protoplasm, which is about the last. The one defect in his splendid mental equipment is that he does not sufficiently allow for the stuff or material of men. In his new utopia he says, for instance, that a chief point of the utopia will be a disbelief in original sin. If he had begun with the human soul, that is, if he had begun on himself, he would have found original sin almost the first thing to be believed in. He would have found, to put the matter shortly, that a permanent possibility of selfishness arises from the mere fact of having a self, and not from any accidents or education or ill-treatment. And the weakness of all utopias is this, that they take the greatest difficulty of man and assume it to be overcome, and then give an elaborate account of the overcoming of the smaller ones. They first assume that no man will want more than his share, and then are very ingenious in explaining whether his share will be delivered by motor car or balloon. And an even stronger example of Mr. Wells' indifference to the human psychology can be found in his cosmopolitanism, the abolition in his utopia of all patriotic boundaries. He says in his innocent way that utopia must be a world state, or else people might make war on it. It does not seem to occur to him that for a good many of us, if it were a world state, we should still make war on it to the end of the world. For if we admit that there must be varieties in art or opinion, what sense is there in thinking there will not be varieties in government? The fact is very simple. Unless you are going deliberately to prevent a thing being good, you cannot prevent it being worth fighting for. It is impossible to prevent a possible conflict of civilizations, because it is impossible to prevent a possible conflict between ideals. If there were no longer a modern strife between nations, there would only be a strife between utopias. For the highest thing does not tend to union only. The highest thing tends also to differentiation. You can often get men to fight for the union, but you can never prevent them from fighting also for the differentiation. This variety in the highest thing is the meaning of the fierce patriotism, the fierce nationalism of the great European civilization. It is also, incidentally, the meaning of the doctrine of the Trinity.